In the event of a surprise attack, it will take many minutes for the alert crews to reach their airplanes, start engines, take off, and fly far enough away to escape destruction. Most of our bombers and tankers are based in coastal areas in short range of submarine-launched missiles. It is doubtful that many aircraft would escape in the 5 to 8 minutes it would take the missiles to reach these bases. The 70% not on alert would certainly be lost. An interim solution to give our aircraft more time to get off the ground would be to move them farther inland, to the center of the continent. It would take submarine-launched missiles 5 to 10 minutes longer to reach these interior bases, giving the bombers more time to escape.
It's certainly true that the Soviets could launch an attack that either now or in the relatively near future would eliminate the great bulk of the ICBM force. They could also eliminate the non-alert bombers. I think it's very doubtful that they could eliminate both the bulk of the bombers and the bulk of the ICBM force because of problems of making that attack simultaneous. And in any event, they couldn't eliminate the submarine force. So that we're talking about not the vulnerability of the whole deterrent. We are in effect talking about the vulnerability of an important part of the deterrent.
The synchronization of such an attack is a technical difficulty that a military planner would have to deal with. And indeed it's difficult, but it's not impossible. The different kinds of missiles fly at different speeds. They fly at different altitudes. The techniques by which we try to detect these things are themselves based on vulnerable points of large radars at various places. A disarming attack is technically possible, although probably not perfectly achievable. But perfection isn't required.
If the United States sustained a surprise attack that resulted in the loss of most of its ICBMs, bombers, and submarines in port, the 25 or more nuclear missile submarines on patrol would certainly remain a powerful force, but a force of restricted usefulness. The depths they rely on for protection also make communication with them extremely difficult. Because their missiles are relatively inaccurate, they can be used only for attacking unprotected military targets and cities. It is a force of last resort that could become vulnerable.
As the Soviet Union improves their technology in submarine detection, we may be facing a problem with submarine vulnerability towards the end of the century. So we need to anticipate that, and the way to anticipate it and to prepare for it is to fix the problem in our land-based missiles by then.
It would be a new type of folly to rely exclusively on our submarines and upon submarine-borne missiles. In the first place, the submarine force is basically usable only for city busting, and the United States, along with the Soviet Union, should be eager to avoid the destruction of urban areas. The capacity of our submarine forces to do pinpoint targeting is quite limited, to say the least. And that is the reason that we must retain the ICBMs in the force structure. But more significantly, if one becomes dependent upon any single arm, such as submarines, the Soviets can devote a much higher percentage of their budget to solving their problems of anti-submarine warfare.
The new cruise missile is being offered as a crutch to help us through our period of ICBM vulnerability. The cruise missile is essentially a small pilotless aircraft which can be armed with a nuclear warhead. It is a technology that holds great promise for America's strategic forces. B-52 bombers will be equipped to carry 20 cruise missiles, which could be launched far from the borders of the Soviet Union. It is believed that such a saturation attack by 2,000 to 3,000 missiles would overwhelm the Soviet air defenses. Flying at 600 miles per hour, 200 feet above the ground, the 1,800-mile range missile would be extremely difficult to detect or shoot down. The cruise missile matches the features of the terrain below it with a digital map that it carries in its onboard computer to find its way to target with unerring accuracy.
The cruise missiles may augment the bomber force. Indeed, they will. assuming that the bomber force carrying the cruise missiles is survivable, both on the ground prior to launch and en route to target. Those cruise missiles are not exceptionally long-range cruise missiles, so the carriers for them are going to have to come very close to and probably even penetrate, to some extent, Soviet air defenses. They're an improvement. They're hardly an answer to the bomber force difficulties. They're no answer at all to the ICBM force difficulties.
Present plans are to use 150 of these B-52s as cruise missile carriers. The remaining 180 B-52s will be expected to fly to their targets. How much longer we can rely on this aircraft, even in the cruise missile role, is a matter of concern.
There's a pretty high level of interest in the Air Force in a new manned bomber, but I'd want to distinguish between a airplane that would be capable of penetrating modern active air defenses and an airplane whose only function would be to deliver cruise missiles from the exterior of the air defense system. Those are two quite different functions. Now, the B-52 is, as it's being outfitted now as a cruise missile carrier, will be quite capable of performing that latter function, a cruise missile launcher, well into the 90s.
They say the B-52s are good till 1995. Then you go to them and say, look, these aircraft were designed in the 1940s, were built in the 50s. The last one came off the production line in 62, the end of 1961. How are these bombers going to be functioning 25 years after the event? How, I mean, you're trying to operate highly complex aircraft 25 years old. No airline would try to maintain service. And here they are trying to penetrate a formidable Soviet air defenses with between 3,000 and 4,000 fighter aircraft, 12,000 air-to-ground missiles, operate thousands of radars. They're trying to do it with these very old aircraft, on the grounds that their technical studies show it can still be done. This is not how a serious military power proceeds.